Welcome to Behind the DM Screen, the podcast where we talk about the tips, tricks, and pitfalls of being a dungeon master. I'm Cameron. I run the socials for WorldSmith.
I'm Matt. I'm the CEO of WorldSmith.
And I'm Ian. I handle creative content, I think. I think that's what I do.
All very important jobs. And today we have a very interesting topic because it is something that new DMs know nothing about and old DMs know everything about.
Ooh.
And that is homebrew.
Spicy.
What is homebrew? Why do we need it?
Do we want to do a user question?
I guess. I guess we can start with the user question.
Now that we've tantalized you with that,
That's our
think about it for
we're
3
gonna
minutes.
use your question. Okay, so first we're going to roll for initiative to see what order we have to answer the question in. I have rolled a 13.
Okay.
12.
Crap. Okay, I'm going first. If it's not a homebrew-based question, I'm not answering it.
Whoa, bold. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
Question number 13 comes from Saphira Roars. And this is actually really... You're going to be able to answer it because it's a homebrew question.
Oh, okay, good.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Saphira Roars
All
says, will WorldSmith be able to make an entirely new class someday? Asking for a friend.
That's a great question.
That is a great question, Saphira Roars, and Cameron has to answer it first.
I wonder if this is even worth you guys answering, because I could just tell you. Am I allowed to?
Yeah,
am I
go
allowed
ahead,
to tell
man.
the
Yeah,
public
do
that?
it. Yeah.
Yes, we do have a class generator coming up. It's something I am super excited for. It has been tricky to implement because there are a lot of elements that go into a class, right? It seems like certain structures of classes, whether it's martial or spellcasters, they follow certain beats that help with balancing. And so if you wanted to make, say, like a Batman class, right, WorldSmith just generates it on the fly, you still want it to be balanced. Otherwise, you have sour.
You have a
players on the
rogue,
table.
yeah.
Exactly. So, we do have a class generator coming. It should be coming up more or less pretty soon. Do we have a timeline on that?
Our goal is end of this month.
Wow.
So end of June.
Whoa.
It's pretty
Coming
soon.
in hot.
Here's the truth of it. We've actually had the class generator built and functioning like on our own local environments for a couple months now. So we've been holding on to it for a minute. To tantalize you guys even more, we've also have a race generator. We also have an organization or guild or group kind of generator. We have this one probably won't be released this month, but we also have a dungeon generator and a city generator. Those ones are even bigger and more complicated than the class and race. But those are the 4 generators that have been a little bit more complicated than the ones that we currently have live on the site. But we are going to have them very, very soon. The only reason they're not released yet is because
They don't work.
they do work. But one of the things that's really important is improving our customization system right now. Because right now, you guys can edit text and edit everything like that. But when it comes to adding new, like just even bullet lists or little sub things or moving things around, which is really important for something as complicated as a class or a race. We haven't figured that out quite yet, but we're in the very final stages of it. So very soon you guys will see a lot more advanced editing and a lot of clicking and dragging stuff coming soon. So hopefully that works really well, and then we can just throw that into the class generator and it'll be easy. So
Yeah.
Ian, I don't know if you can really add to that.
They keep me away from the nuts and bolts of this company as far as possible. I basically pop into the team stand-ups and say, wouldn't it be cool if we had something like this? And then there's like a long pause from Bryce, and Bryce is like, that's going to be very hard to build. And I'm like, it'd be fun to make a video about. So no, I can't really answer this question except for that I'm excited for it. And
what's the first thing you're putting into the class generator?
Well, I think we previously discussed that the class that I'm interested in is like a meandering fool.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think like a
Samwise,
jester.
perhaps?
Yeah. A jester or a gardener is probably where I'm going first with those. But no, I'm super excited. I think it'll be a lot of fun for people to whip stuff up, and I'm very interested to see what kind of stuff people create and stuff like that. So
Yeah, good question. And that segues perfectly.
It literally
into
was a
our
homebrew
conversation.
question. Yeah, the gods of D&D approve.
Yes. So before we start, I want to hear your guys' definition of what homebrew is, and when and why did you start implementing it into your D&D campaigns?
Yeah, I started, as we've kind of discussed before, I started playing D&D really young. So I actually didn't grow up with a DM guide. I just had the player handbook and the monster manual, and so I didn't even really know that there was like a standard list of magic items. Actually,
Oh, so you just made them all up?
I just made them all up. Yeah,
I love
because
that.
because I was basically just like in the player handbook they have standard equipment, but they don't really have magic items in the player handbook.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Like they have a couple, but it's like really small list. So I would basically be like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it'd be cool if you had a sword that I don't know, like also dealt fire damage or something. And I was just kind of making that stuff up on the fly. And it literally has just been since I picked 5e back up again within the last 6 years or something, that I kind of have been like, oh yeah, there is actually like a whole bunch of just like standardized magic items, standardized potions, standardized things like that. So I've really kind of started with homebrew, honestly, and it's only more recently that I've even kind of noticed that there is a way to not do homebrew. And so homebrew is like just making up your own, generally magic items is generally, and NPCs and stuff like that, and sometimes monsters. Has been really my bread and butter kind of from the beginning of D&D.
Yeah.
I see homebrew subclasses a lot too, just like people wanting to make their own
Subclasses
spins
are
on
great.
stuff.
Yeah. I think on the very similar note, homebrew to me is just anything that isn't given to us by Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
So if you want to make something that's custom for your game, that's probably what I would qualify as homebrew. So in my case, when I first started D&D, I started playing when I was 14. It was 2014, so it was the very start of 5e, so that's what I started playing on first. And at first it was very exciting because there are tons of monsters and tons of custom creations and things that you can play as. I remember even the most basic monsters were new and exciting to me, like a shambling mound. And I was like, how do I fight this? What is it? I have no idea, But as you start to play the game more, it's really hard to not metagame or have things that aren't new and exciting. So for me, it was when I first started playing as a DM, I would see something that my players would be excited about, and I'd be like, there's nothing that's perfect for that in the books, right? So I'd say, okay, here's a new custom god, right? And here's a new magic spell that you can do just you, right? And that's where I kind of got introduced to homebrew.
And if there was something perfect for it, you would need to know the monster manual back and forth in order to implement that in the moment, and that can be very difficult. Unless you're like prepping your entire sessions beforehand, which can lead to like some railroading elements. It can be hard to come up with stuff on the fly. Luckily, we do have a tool for that, right? Let's talk about WorldSmith for a second. Okay, WorldSmith is great because you can create homebrew for essentially anything, items, monsters, NPCs. Do you find yourself, when using WorldSmith, prepping more beforehand, before the session with these homebrew tools, or during the session are you finding yourself generating more stuff on the fly in the hopes that you're using WorldSmith as a way to adapt, essentially?
Yeah, I think both. I think what I think is exciting to me about WorldSmith is that I was making lots of homebrew before I started using WorldSmith, but I wasn't getting surprised by my own homebrew. I actually liked being able to go into the monster manual and be just surprised by a monster ability that I didn't expect, or that was like, oh, now I'm thinking about this combat in a way I never would before. And I liked that, but it still felt quite narrow.
Right.
And so what I love about WorldSmith is I can go in, I can put in an idea for like a concept for a magic item or a concept for a creature, and then it gives me an ability that often still does surprise me. It feels like finding an entry in the monster manual that I have just never found before, which I actually really like that feeling. Whereas I think if I was building it completely from homebrew, I think I would default to some more kind of either basic approaches or just approaches that make sense to me, of just kind of being like, okay, well, sure, well, they'll just make a dex save, I guess, and then they'll take some fire damage. But then you get into it and then you get a really interesting ability maybe on a monster where you're like, oh, it's actually dealing fatigue and they're taking constitution saves or something just things that surprise me in a new way. So that's what I love about using WorldSmith. And to your second question of I think it's really a combination of both. When I use WorldSmith, I prep probably, I would say 90% of my WorldSmith pages I prep before I sit down to the session. Generally monsters, NPCs, magic items, sometimes feats and spells as well. I would say the WorldSmith generator I use the most on the fly though is often treasure, actually, because like a lot of times the players will be like, oh, we want to search this room or something, and in my mind I'm just like, yeah, I could have them find some gold and silver pieces and a piece of rope and a dagger, which is fine. But if I just quick go into the treasure generator and just be like, give me some gold, give me some art, give me like a scroll, and give me a cursed item, and make it like really low value. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Just make it like less than 50 gold pieces. But then you just get something interesting where you get to say to the player, like, you find like an iron serpent, and they're like, oh, really? And then I'm like, yeah, it's worth like 6 gold pieces. And then they're like, that's cooler than finding 6 gold.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And again, it's just kind of one of those things where, like, a lot of times my brain is just not quite moving fast enough to come. And also I like being surprised by that. That's my favorite part about using WorldSmith, is that I personally like being surprised in a game, even as a DM. I like being surprised by, oh wow, I didn't expect that we would either discover that, or I didn't expect this monster would have this strong ability, or I didn't expect that when I gave you that magic item you would find a way to use it in a way I've never thought about.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think 90% of my WorldSmith pages I prep before, but then it is great for NPCs and treasure is probably what I use the most on the fly. If all of a sudden I'm like, oh darn, like this barkeep now has to get in a fight, I can kind of like quickly be like, okay, let's
Here's
just like whip up some abilities.
Sure.
And
CR20 barkeep.
it's way better than me. Like before, I would basically just completely wing it. Like I would basically in my head be like, he probably has a persuasion +2, I guess, or like he probably has an AC 12. Like like that's fine.
You
like
ever
you can
roll a d20, you're like, good enough.
no, 100%. And you can totally do that, but I think again, like I always want to put myself in situations where the players have a chance to drastically fail in ways that even I as a DM will not expect. And you get a higher chance of that when you have a real stat sheet. Because when you have a real stat sheet, then suddenly you look at it and you're like, oh, darn, he really does deal 35 damage when he hits you with his sword. And I'm like, that is going to kill that player. And that makes, in my opinion, for a better game. Whereas if I was just making it up on the fly and I knew that the player was close to dying, I'd be tempted as a human being to be like, oh, I'll just roll like 2d6. Like, it's really not that, you know.
Right.
Because I don't want the player to be killed by this innkeeper. But I'm like, that could be really interesting for the session if
Never
the player
know.
did get knocked by the innkeeper, you know. So
Yeah, we battled with custom homebrew monsters recently.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the opportunity to experience your monster's possession ability, where I was possessed for an entire
Experience
minute,
it.
stabbing myself. That is not something you would find in the monster manual. And sure, as a DM, if
ghosts actually do it, but
for a whole minute,
yeah, I think so.
I
But I could be
remember
really
that.
wrong. I love to find. Whenever I play sessions, I'm always doing the weird stuff.
You
but,
are the.
But I mean, the ghosts are bad in ways that monster was not. Like
Sure.
ghosts are CR3 or
Super
4 or something
low.
like that. Like they're actually quite easy to defeat.
Yeah.
So I was like, but if you took that ability, you combined it with a CR10 monster, which is what. Yeah.
So my biggest like the most fun I have with WorldSmith is generating OP stuff. I love making the God Slayer swords, the potions that make you invincible, monsters that are not meant to be defeated. I mean, I run our socials, so my job is literally to just generate every day and make engaging, exciting stuff. And WorldSmith like spits out some of the craziest stuff. I think in particular, magic items and monsters seem to be the outliers here. Matt, is there like a generator that you prefer to use in that way? And also to that question, just like Ian was mentioning how he preps more so beforehand, do you find yourself using WorldSmith on the fly to generate pretty cool stuff?
Yeah, I do sometimes, but I'm much more of a heavy prepper than I am like using WorldSmith in the middle. When it comes to in the middle of a game, I'll often rely on my own just like improv stuff, because I'm just slow in general. If it's like if I have to click anything, you know, it'll slow me down. So I find that when it comes to homebrew in general, the key benefits for me are it adds a lot of my own personal flair to things, right? So if I want my players to have like my story, my style, their style included, you know, it just makes it a lot easier to do that. So for example, if I was running kind of like Curse of Strahd, for example, you know, it's a very classic, a little bit more horror style, gritty, D&D campaign. It's one of the most popular because everything is themed so well around this beautiful story. And you don't see that as much in other campaigns, but when you do things with Homebrew, all of a sudden you can attach all of this flavor to just one central theme and do it really, really well. The other reason I like to do it is because I find that players are a lot more engaged when you use Homebrew, because like I said before, you can find something that really matters to that player and then make something custom for them, right? So whether it's a custom magic item or a custom monster or even just a bad guy that's growing in a unique way that's specific to this party, like all of a sudden you have a story that's very central and one theme to your style and what's perfect for you, and then also what's perfect to keep your party really happy and engaged. So in that way, I like to plan a lot beforehand because I'm thinking about, hey, what's going to be best for this player? What's going to be best for this player? What's going to be best for the overall story and what we want? So in that, I like, obviously I use probably NPCs or monsters the most because that's something that my players are interacting with. Number 3 is probably magic items because that's a really good way to just give your players something that they love. Same with spells. And then I would say shops is something that I use a good amount, and treasure just because of high functionality. You know, like a lot of the time players want to go to shops. It's a lot of effort to plan all that stuff out in a spreadsheet on my own. So that's something that I definitely lean on WorldSmith just to like help me make my session easier for me.
You both use it heavily to prep beforehand. I'm actually the opposite. I'm very abusive towards WorldSmith. I'm a very abusive person. You know that Jarvis, hack this guy's bank account meme, you know? Show me this guy's balls, you know, that kind of thing. When I'm playing D&D, I have like 20 tabs open. I'm like, WorldSmith, give me a custom Moon Druid magic item for this guy's backstory. He just hit level 6. Next tab, I'm like, I need a custom NPC. He's going to stab this guy in the back, make him scary. And I just spam that stuff during sessions. And if it doesn't look good, like I can just skim over and just regenerate. There's actually an enhanced feature on the site where I can just say like, this guy isn't strong enough, bump him up to a CR12. Or like, I like this ability, change everything else. You know, just tell WorldSmith, and it'll just spit it out. And it's crazy. I haven't seen anything quite like it, and it really helps when you need that on the fly stuff. Because obviously WorldSmith, with the updates we're trying to push, it's going to be very easy to make your own custom items, whatever, Homebrew. In a way, WorldSmith is becoming a Homebrew site where you can just customize anything you want about anything in D&D. But that AI functionality and the ability to generate stuff on the fly, even if it's not perfect and you want to tweak it and save it as your own, it saved me a lot of times, and it's made for some really unique and fun moments in, I don't know, in my D&D sessions. So,
yeah, totally. I like too that it allows for like a different kind of similar to what you said of like you can theme stuff around one thing, but I think you can also like it can allow you to bring in like a flavor that D&D maybe doesn't have in it. You know, I come from like an old school like wargaming background, and so I really like the chance of failure and things. Like I really like the chance of catastrophic like weirdness happening. It's like the Wild Magic table is like my favorite page in the player's handbook. And so a lot of times when I'm on WorldSmith and building magic items, I'll just kind of toss that in there. I'll just be like, there's a chance that it backfires, and I just put that at the end. And oftentimes then they build in something really fun that's just like when you use the item, you roll a d20, you know, on a 6 through 20 this happens, but on a 1 through 5 like actually you get like frozen in a block of ice for like an hour or something. And I really like that flavor in my game, and that's something you're just not going to find. Like D&D does not really run in that circle generally. Like they generally are not handing out cursed items to players. That's just like not a huge part of the game generally.
Doesn't happen as much.
And I homebrew a lot of that stuff, and sometimes I make it up on my own, but it is really fun to like pop it into WorldSmith as well, because you can kind of get some of that balance factor, and it's fun to build into like monsters and NPCs too. Like giving monsters a chance of their abilities backfiring is something that I also like. So you can kind of start to, I think, theme a lot of the stuff in your game around also just kind of like a play style. If you want your game to be sillier, to have like a chance of failure, if you want your game to like hit really hard and like just have like way more abilities that activate on crits and have crits activate on 17s and stuff like that. You can like you can just kind of start to build that tone into your game, and all those little threads are going to make the game have its own unique feeling, whether it's like more it just you can theme it after how you like, basically.
Right.
Yeah, and any player is just going to have that and just love the game that much more, you know? Because it's just, the more you can customize the story for you and your players, then the better the game is going to be for everyone, you know? It's the whole point of collaborative storytelling. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. My players have enjoyed homebrew campaigns. Like, maybe I'm not good at running the modules because I'm so used to homebrew, but players tend to have more fun when they feel like everything is specialized towards them.
Yeah,
you know?
totally. I would agree with that. Yeah, I'm gonna go on record as having never run a module in my entire life.
You're
Good on
not
you.
alone. I didn't know this really, but there was a really big I forget who it was on Twitter. It was like a really big public DM, and he like had a big forum, and he had like 6,000 different responses on this forum, and it was specifically to DMs. It said, how many of you will run a pre-made module? And 60% of DMs run modules, and then 40% don't, which is crazy because it's like one of Wizards of the Coast's biggest product. It's like essentially the heart of D&D, other than the 3 basic books.
Yeah, totally.
Right? So it shows just how important homebrew really is to a lot of people, and being able to have a purely custom story to them.
I feel like a lot of the modules, I'm not able to pilot them well. I own every module. I've given so much money to Wizards of the Coast, but I like, after chapter 3 or 4 of the module, I'm just like, this is not the direction I want to take it. I'm just gonna change it. I'm gonna make it my own, and they can go wherever they want, my players.
Well, and there's a lot to be said for that. You know, I mean, I think that's another reason why I think we built WorldSmith, is like, ultimately we just want like DMing to be accessible to people, right?
Exactly.
And so it's like, a lot of times when I build something in WorldSmith, it just serves as just kind of like a launching pad for me to just use as like a framework. And I might get into the middle of a fight and I read an ability on a monster and I'm like, well, actually that's just kind of weird and I don't like that.
Yeah.
And I think just remembering that, like, that's okay. It's okay to get halfway through a module and decide you want to take it a different direction. It's okay to, like, you know, find something in the player's handbook and say, I want to tweak this. It's okay to generate something on WorldSmith and then also decide you want to tweak it or abandon it or things like that. Like, and I think that's ultimately, at the end of the day, like, we just want DMing to be accessible to as many people as possible, to have tables be fun for as many people as possible, to make it feel like you don't have to follow the module exactly, or you can follow the module exactly if that's what like helps you to run a game that's fun for you and your players. So it's like, and that's kind of the thing with like, I think the general, I think, approach behind Homebrew is just like, everybody should get to interact with the table and with the game in the way that they want to. And if that means like just pulling all your magic items straight from the DM guide, you could run an awesome game doing that and your players could have a blast. Or you could not, as long, you know, it just kind of like depends on what excites you about the game. And there's so many ways to do that.
So Matt and I, we were experimenting with this new function that WorldSmith has, which is you can upload a file or text document or any kind of notes into the generator, and it will take those notes into mind as it's generating the thing you want. So, for example, if I created a Google Doc that listed all of the critical information about my world, my homebrew world, then I could attach that to all of my, let's say, NPC generations, and in their backstories, it will include like, oh, this guy's from that town, that's important in your overarching world, right? And it got me thinking, like, I feel like if we leverage this could be like the ultimate, I don't know, world building homebrew tool. Like, because the issue with a lot of AI generators is there's no connecting lines between what you make, right? You have to do a lot of tinkering on your own to make it work. But if you just feed the AI the information, then you don't really run into that issue.
Yeah, that's the beauty. I mean, that's one of the things that's beautiful about the website is you can come on and you can create one NPC. It's the first one, for example, right? And then that's like, let's say that's like one of the main NPCs in your campaign. And then maybe he's like the king, and everyone that interacts with every person that your party interacts with in the castle is like someone from his family, right? And every single NPC can now reference that one NPC as context, right?
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
you can just go in and select him and be like, this is this king's son.
Yeah, it's the king's son. This is the king's cousin. This is the king's nephew, but he hates the king because it's this, right? And it's like all these things, and it'll tie back to that one character or as many characters as you want. Eventually we'll be able to like add your players. This can be the player's sister, you know, this can, maybe you just upload something about a red dragon because for some reason you hate red dragons, which would be crazy, but you know, like I want all red dragons to be different. So here's like this as context, now make it better. Which again, just allows you to customize more. But something you said actually, just not to change the topic a little bit, but I really loved what you were talking about earlier, because I think another thing that's added when you're able to use Homebrew and stuff is just a level of ownership, because campaign modules and all these other things are great, but sometimes it's hard to get really, really into something if it's not yours to a degree. Whereas if you come to WorldSmith and you create something and then you tweak it and make it your own, like there's always going to be your hand in that. It makes it a lot easier for you to know who your monsters are, what their motivations are, and just craft a story that you're really into as well. And it still allows you to have that extra flavor of like, oh, there's something in here that is exciting to me and new to me. Because like when you just do it on your own, then you don't have that exciting part where, you know, oh, this is all just straight from my mind. Like maybe it's a little bit more cookie cutter because I only know so much, right? But when you do it like this, it's like, okay, I know everything about these people because they were my creation, but then they also have surprising aspects that are a little bit different than what I can typically do. So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I love that point. Have you guys ever, well, not you, but have you ever been running a campaign module and your player, like, let's say Tomb of Annihilation, you're playing this dwarf.
Oh my gosh.
The blue mist fever is out in the jungle. And then your player's like, what's blue mist fever? And suddenly as the DM, you realize you don't know what blue mist fever is. And you feel like all of the power you have is stripped away because now you're like, give me one sec. And you start flipping through pages. And you're like, I know I read about it somewhere. And you don't want to screw it up.
Oh my gosh.
But if my homebrewed red mist fever came up in conversation, you bet your butt I know what red mist fever is.
There's not a chance you forget what it is, right? And those modules are so big. They're amazing, right? Because they allow you to have your players do anything. But that also is just so much information to just know on your own. Like even just the dungeons sometimes, you know? And like, I don't know if this ever happens to you as a DM, but when I run those modules sometimes, I almost want to like push my players to certain decisions because I'm like, here's this massive dungeon, right? Here's all these crazy things that can happen, or this city that's in the module. And I know as a DM that they have to do this very specific thing to get this very cool reward that's very hidden and
railroad.
And I don't want to do that, you know? So it's just tough when you know all of the opportunities, and like if you're even a little bit of completionist, like it's never gonna happen in a pre-made module. Your players, not a chance. They'll maybe do like 10% of it, you know, which again, it's how it's supposed to be, but it's hard sometimes.
It is. It can be hard. Before we move on to our puzzler, I wanted to mention or bring up there's a new function on WorldSmith, which is the ability to share your creations in a more public forum. So now if you go onto WorldSmith, you can find all of the public creations. You can sort it by what's hot, you know, most liked. And essentially what we're doing is we're creating an open source for Homebrew, which is something super exciting because, you know, if you go in there, search up like I want Mario, and maybe someone's fine-tuned a Mario for you, you can just pull it up on the fly. Likewise, if you're interested in creating your own Homebrew through WorldSmith, you can just post it publicly, you can share it, and people can, you know, tell you what they think about that creation. So definitely give that a try if you're interested in any kind of Homebrew. And if Homebrew's intimidating, then maybe check out some other people's creations and see how they did it. I love that.
And you can edit those creations.
You can. You don't like his like his hit points, his AC, you know, just like cut them in half, change it up, enhance it. You can truly change this. It just changes homebrew. Like it changes the game. The amount of times I've pulled up homebrew, and I was like, this is almost perfect, but it's not perfect, so I'm not going to use it. Now it can be perfect, and I love that. Yeah. Anyways, Ian, you have a puzzler for us.
I do have a puzzler. This one's comes from a game that I was a player in just a couple weeks ago, actually. So we were fighting a beholder, classic beholder. Beholders have probably what I think is probably the best ability in the game, which is the anti-magic cone. If you don't know how the anti-magic cone works, basically wherever the beholder's main eye is looking, it's like a 60-foot cone, and no magic abilities of any kind work in it. Magic items don't work in it. Magic spells, of course, don't work in it. Even like different features, like class features or other things that are like magic related, don't work in it. So you can't use even certain like cleric abilities that are like just considered a spell and stuff don't work. So we were in a situation where we had a cleric that was a twilight cleric, and so it was a dim room. They were flying, but they were over lava.
Oh jeez.
And then the beholder looked at them.
Oh no.
And so the flying turned off. They were falling towards the lava, and I'll just say this: they did not land in the lava. And my puzzler for you is, and they did not use any items. And my puzzler for you is, how was that done?
A new style puzzler. I'm intrigued
So leave
by
in
this.
your comments, if you were a cleric and you were tumbling towards lava in an anti-magic cone, how would you get out of it without using any magic items on your person? There is a, don't say anything. There is a solution to this in the rules that follows all the rules. And comment if you think you know the answer, and we'll disclose it next week.
I want to say something.
We'll
Gotta
see.
Bye, guys. Wait.